Jesse hefted the MAC-10 loaded clip and shoved the extra clips in his pocket, opened the door, and got out. He pushed the door to without slamming it and glanced up and down the wooded road. The homes along this stretch were few and far between. The next nearest mailbox was at least 100 yards back. He slipped the gun strap around his neck, setting the machine pistol beneath his arm. The light snow had turned into a miserable drizzle. He flipped up his jacket collar and, sticking to the trees, headed over the rise toward Dillard's. Jesse hunkered down in the bushes at the edge of Dillard's yard, wishing he had a cigarette or something to calm his nerves. The cruiser was gone, which meant there was a real good chance Dillard was too. And if Dillard happened to be home, hopefully he'd still be in bed, giving Jesse some chance at catching him by surprise. Are you prepared to shoot him? Jesse recalled the last time he had to make that choice. This is different. This isn't about me. This is about Abigail. I will shoot him if I have to. He took a deep breath, pulled the bolt back on the Mac, hoping to hell he wouldn't have to shoot anybody. He broke cover and headed down the slope. Jesse crept along the front of the house, trying to peek in the window, looking for lights, any clue who might be inside. He started to climb into the front porch when the door opened. Jesse jumped, jerked the gun up, finger on the trigger. Linda stood at the crack of the door for a moment, and he forgot about Dillard. The general, even Krampus, only felt the ache in his heart. Jesse, Linda said, looking shocked, what are you doing here? He darted up the steps, trying to see inside, keeping the gun ready. Is he here? He hissed. Is Dillard here? She shook her head, and a rush of relief washed through him. Linda glanced up and down the road. Quick, get in here before someone sees you. Jesse ducked inside the foyer. Where's Abigail? She looked him over, and he could see in her eyes what a mess he must be. Jesse, I'm so worried about you. What is she here? Is Abigail here? Jesse, would you please put that gun away? He caught the quiver in her voice, noticing she was talking to him carefully, the way you'd talk to a crazy person. Please, she said, just put it down and talk to me, Jesse, please. He saw it then, the fear in her eyes. Oh, Linda, oh no, you got it all wrong. He yanked the gun strap from around his neck, sat the weapon on the hall table beneath the oval mirror, and stepped toward her. Baby, last thing I meant to do was scare you. She backed away. He couldn't stand the pain in her eyes. He reached for her, taking another step. Linda, please just listen. I can explain From the corner of his eye, he caught sight of a shadow rushing out from the dark den. It hit him before he could turn, driving him into the wall with a tremendous thud. His feet were kicked out from under him, and he hit the floor, his head bouncing off the river rock tile. For a moment, everything went bright white and syrupy. A crushing weight landed on his back. Hard hands twisted his arms behind him, and cold steel clamped around his wrists. He was patted down, then a big boot kicked him over. When things came back into focus, he found himself staring up at Dillard's cold eyes. That ought to take some of the spit out of you, Dillard said. Jesse searched for Linda, found her clutching her face in her hands. Linda, why? Jesse, I'm so sorry. I just wanted to do what was best. I was scared you were going to end up getting hurt, scared you might hurt somebody, scared for Abby. She gave him a pleading look, opened her mouth to say more, then burst into tears. She hid her face in her hands and sobbed. For Abby? Then hit him. For Abby? Then hit him. Linda had no idea. Linda, no, you got it all wrong. It's the general that means to hurt Abby. Don't you see, baby? Dillard, too, they're all in on it. They're playing you two. Dillard drove his boot into Jesse's stomach. Jesse doubled up, groaning. Stop it, Linda shouted. Dillard ignored her, picked up the MAC-10 off the table. How'd you come by this? Jesse glared at Dillard, but didn't answer. I asked where you got this goddamn gun from. Pulled it out of my ass, Jesse shouted. Dillard leaned over, grabbed a handful of Jesse's hair, and slammed his face into the floor. Jesse felt something snap in his nose, and his head exploded in a burst of bright pain. Stop, Linda screamed, and grabbed Dillard by the arm. Stop it. Dillard stood up, locked his stony gray eyes on her. She fell back a step. Linda, I'm going to tell you this one time, his voice cold, void of emotion. Go down the hall to Abigail's room and stay there. Linda's lips tightened. She was shaking. No, I won't. Dillard tilted his head as though he weren't hearing right, then sat the MAC-10 back on the table and took a step toward her. A vehicle, a truck by the sound of it, pulled up outside. Jessie heard doors slamming, excited voices, then the drumming of feet on the porch. The front door burst open, and Chet and Ash Boggs rushed in, weapons leveled. Chet carried a pistol and Ash a scattergun. They saw Jessie on the floor, grinned, and lowered their weapons. Ash set out a whoop, and all 300 pounds of him practically danced over to where Jessie lay. He jabbed a finger at Jessie and said, "Picked the wrong sumbitch to steal from, didn't you, cocksucker? Why, the general's gonna boil you alive, boy." Linda's eyes shot at Dillard. "What's he talking about?" "Ash," Dillard said, "why don't you shut up?" "Dillard?" Linda pressed. "They threatened to kill Abby," Jessie spat. "Dillard's part of it. Open your eyes, Linda, before it's too..." Dillard kicked him again. "Dillard!" Linda cried. "What's he talking about?" Dillard didn't answer. "He's not going with them," Linda said, and Jessie saw the stubborn take-no-shit-off one gal he'd fallen in love with. "He's not going with them," Linda said, and Jessie saw the stubborn take-no-shit-off-no-one gal he'd fallen in love with. "I won't let him take him. I'll call the sheriff if I have to, and he's not going anywhere with them. But he's not going anywhere with them." Chet and Ash exchanged a glance. Dillard stared at Jessie. His eyes burned into him, nodding to himself slowly. Oh my gosh. Dillard stared at Jessie. His eyes burned into him, nodding to himself. Slowly he lifted his head, fixing those burning eyes on Linda. "Linda," he said in his tone tight and strained, "leave." "I won't." Dillard closed his eyes, and Jessie started to shout, tried to warn Linda, but Dillard was already on the move. He swung, caught her in the face with his open palm, spinning her around. Her feet tangled, and she tumbled into the living room. "You fucking piece of shit," Jessie cried, and tried to make his feet. Ash, a man easily double Jessie's weight, dropped atop Jessie, pinning him with his knees. Linda sat up, touched her busted lip, and looked at the blood on her fingers. "Mommy?" Abigail stood in the hallway in her pajamas. She clutched her doll, her eyes focused. She saw Jessie. "Daddy? Daddy!" she cried, and dashed towards him. Dillard grabbed for her arm, missed, and caught hold of her hair, yanking her back. Abigail screamed, a sound full of terror and pain. "Fuck," Jessie cried, kicking and bucking, not even feeling the cuffs biting into his wrists as he fought to dislodge Ash. "Oh, no, you don't," Ash said, and hammered a fist into the back of Jessie's head. Jessie's vision blurred again, but he could still hear Abigail crying. Dillard, still clutching Abigail by the hair, dragged her over to a door on the far side of the living room and opened it. It appeared to lead down into the basement. "Linda," he snapped, "if you don't want her getting hurt, you're going to take her downstairs, now." Linda climbed to her feet and rushed over to Abigail, picking her up. Abigail clung to her neck, wailing. Jessie caught one last terrified look from Linda as she and Abigail disappeared down the stairwell. "Damn it," Chet said under his breath. "Didn't I warn you, Jessie? Didn't I tell you not to fuck with him?" Dillard slammed the door shut and turned the bolt, locking the girls in. He stood there for a minute, taking long, deep breaths. Slowly he turned to Jessie, walked back into the hall, and plucked the MAC-10 back up. He squatted on one knee and grabbed Jessie by the hair, pointing the machine pistol into Jessie's face. "Where'd you get this gun?" Blood ran from Jessie's nose and his mouth and down his chin. "Shoot me, asshole," Jessie spat, and meant it. He knew he was done for, one way or another. Just wanted Abigail's heart-wrenching scream gone from his head. He couldn't bear to think of what might happen to Linda and Abigail now. Dillard might be right. Dillard had been right. "Alexa, stop." Jessie spat, and he meant it. "Oh, shoot me, asshole," Jessie spat, and he meant it. He knew he was done for, one way or another, and Jessie wanted Abigail's heart-wrenching scream gone from his head. He couldn't bear to think of what might happen to Linda and Abigail now. Dillard had been right. He was a loser. He'd not just failed, he'd made everything worse for everyone. Dillard pressed the gun against Jesse's temple, rested his finger on the trigger. Both Chet and Ash moved back. The foyer fell dead quiet, and Jesse clenched his eyes shut, waiting. Hey, Dillard, Chet said softly. General said we're supposed to bring him in alive, you know. I'm just saying. Dillard didn't move, seemed to be made of stone. Dillard, man, come on. None of us need the general on our asses. Dillard let out a long sigh, handed the MAC-10 to Chet, leaned over, and spoke into Jesse's ear. You fucked everything up. For me, for you, for Linda and Abigail. A tremor crept into his voice. He sounded on the verge of tears. I made you a promise last time we spoke, you remember? I told you what would happen if you set foot on my property again. He grabbed hold of Jesse's pinky, gave it a quick twist, bent the finger all the way backward. Jesse felt a snap and a shot of pain rocketed up his arm. He screamed. Dillard moved to the next finger, then the next, twisting and snapping each finger on Jesse's hand, not just dislocating them, but breaking them. Jesse screamed and bucked. He tried to understand how anything could hurt so bad. The world began to spin, all bright lights and the taste of the stone tile against his teeth. With a final twist, Dillard snapped Jesse's thumb. Mercifully, Jesse lost consciousness and the world swam in darkness.